meeting for tonight. I appreciate it. It looks like we have our team here. I'd like to then formally open our special meeting and workshop of the board this December 21st at 5:31 p.m. I wanted to begin tonight by really stating the purpose of our meeting, and it's to follow through with a comment made at our last board meeting by one of our directors. As you know, the board operates out of a collective voice or a quorum, and we call this one voice. Therefore, the board as a whole needs to reinforce our commitment to equity to our superintendent, really staff, certainly our students and community. I'd also like to remind the audience that we've been on this equity journey really for quite some time, yet we still do not feel as though we have arrived. We as a board are still learning together, and we may make mistakes along the way, but we truly want to be teachable and correctable. We want to learn together. And thus we give opportunity in our meetings to seek clarification and or even be corrected. And this meeting serves as such an opportunity. We're not here to take action on either dismissing or defending the comment. We're here to better understand how we can collectively continue our commitment along this work of equity. In our workshop tonight, we will not be receiving comments nor emails. This is a workshop. It's not a regular meeting of the board. Again, we will take action at our next board meeting, which is January 11th, to state our support for our Declaration of Equity that was formed earlier this year. And please, those of you who are attending, thank you so much for your interest and your desire to make sure that we're held accountable to that which is in the best interest of our students and community. And with that in mind, I ask you to please stay for the entire meeting so that you can really hear each director's perspective on the comment and really their commitment and our collective commitment to equity. And so we wouldn't want anyone to be defined by a statement that could be misconstrued. We do want to make sure that we give everyone an opportunity to share what they mean by the things that we say. So that requires that we give people an opportunity to be heard. We want to give that to each and every person. And before we begin our meeting tonight, I think we really do well to recall that our district currently has a policy on equity. It dates all the way back to when Dr. Doris McEwen was superintendent back in 2004 under her leadership with the board that supported her. And then again in 2012 with Superintendent LeBeau and the board that supported her. And so our policy in equity 1109 isn't a new thing. It's been a part of something that we've been committed to for quite some time. And with that in mind, I think it really would be helpful before we open up the meeting to give Superintendent Banner an opportunity to just share in your report, if you would, about our district's focus around and associated with the activities that have to do with equity.
Thank you, President Schaefer and school board directors. So this opportunity gives me the chance to bring some historical context to the district's equity journey. Since accepting the role of superintendent, my goal has been to maintain a unified focus on equity. I've worked with the board president to build teamwork and consistency in both the governance and the application of our work within the district through joint board and superintendent council trainings. From the start of our equity work, we have focused on the concept of we see Lakewood, seek to understand and be sensitive to. In June of 2019, the board and council took a bus tour of Lakewood to better understand who our students and families were. That tour was followed by our board retreat, where we further discussed our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the need to develop a lens where we truly saw Lakewood. In August of 2019, the board made a declaration to equity, diversity, and inclusion. This was presented to the board on August 2nd, 2019 through board briefs and was a direct result of the June 2019 We See Lakewood board retreat. As you can see on the screen, that declaration reads as follows. The Clover Park School District Board of Directors declares its commitment to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion rights within the school district in the following manner. The district will have a person dedicated to our initiative around supporting culture and value of diversity. We will actively promote the development and implementation of proactive diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, which will support the district's strategic plan. We understand the value of a diverse and inclusive culture to create a holistic learning environment. We will engage classified, certificated, and administrative staff, families, and students to build a welcoming and inclusive culture at Clover Park School District to ensure all students are able to reach their full potential. We will develop strategies focused on recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce that is reflective of our community and the students that we serve by creating a more inclusive organizational structure, culture, and promoting ongoing growth and dynamic learning. We will design training initiatives on cultural competency, gender identity or expression, mental or physical disability, sexual harassment, and other topics designed to increase awareness and support of equity and inclusion values and maintaining compliance with applicable laws. We will ensure our policies and procedures comply with our promise to uphold the equity, diversity, and inclusion rights of staff, students, and families that we serve. In October of 2019, the board and council held a workshop on equity and community. This training was focused on the connection between equity and building a strong community. In January of 2020, the board and council held a workshop facilitated by Mary Fertakis, a consultant from the Washington State School Directors Association. The focus of this training was developing an equity lens and perspective. In June of 2020, the same organization, Wasda, accepted the district's proposal to present at its annual conference in November of the same year. Between June and October of 2020, the district developed its presentation for the Wasda annual conference, which was submitted to the board via board briefs for feedback and a one-voice approval. Also in October of 2020, the board met in the workshop setting to discuss and ultimately agree to endorse the current Wasda equity statement language. That statement reads, equity is foundational to the work of Wasda. Educational equity can only exist when a student's level of opportunity and achievement cannot be predicted based on race, characteristics, or circumstances. Therefore, we must identify and eliminate any discriminatory practices and prejudices within our state's public education system. Also in October of 2020, the board held a workshop facilitated by Grant Twyman, our Equity and Inclusion Program Manager. And the focus of this training was how to be a great team focused on equity and inclusion. In November of 2020, the district presented its journey at the annual Wasda conference titled Redefining Student Success with Equity and Community at the Core. The district has also engaged in several other pathways towards equity. And so at this time, I would like to ask Grant Twyman, the District Equity and Inclusion Program Manager, to frame the district's equity work journey with regard to students, staff, and community. Grant?
Thank you, sir. Board President, School Board Directors, Superintendent Banner, and Council. One of the fundamental aspects of our equity journey to date has been this drive to elevate and empower diverse voices. The work that we've been doing with our students is fostering a district community where students feel seen, they feel heard, respected, valued, and celebrated. And we are intentionally equipping students with skills to partner with the adults in their community to steward the work of equity. We're seeing students come alive with passion, motivation. We're seeing them inspired when given the opportunity to share their voice and partner with Clover Park School District staff, and as they feel empowered to facilitate progress and change. In terms of staff support, one of the ways we've been able to create or foster equity and inclusion in classrooms is implementing staff professional development, which really embodies our commitment to seek to understand and be sensitive to. Our classroom educators have been embracing our district PD with incredible enthusiasm and excitement. And mostly their report is feeling support. They're feeling like they can support and serve this diverse student body that come from really diverse families. And then finally, the work we've been doing with the members in our community has the breadth and depth that sets up our students for success. We've been hearing from Clover Park School District alumni, some as recent as graduated 2 years ago to some that have graduated in the 80s and the 90s, and even members throughout the community of Lakewood about innovative recruiting strategies, as well as even more nuanced details to curriculum and content. We've been able to partner with our community to really develop a more robust lens for equity, all encompassing this idea of We See Lakewood to support the We See Lakewood initiative. Our equity journey continues. We anticipate exponential growth in our capacity to foster student success in collaboration with a dynamic student body, which is crucial, dedicated staff, which is essential, and the beautiful diversity throughout the community of Lakewood. And my assessment, sir, is that the work of equity is the catalyst to true progress for each student in our district.
Thank you.
Banner.
Thank you, Grant. And I'll just conclude my report with, we are, as a district, extremely proud of the work that we're doing and the work that still is yet to be done. And that last part of the statement is why, while we're very proud, we're not taking any victory laps because we know that there's a lot of work to be done. But again, to come back to a phrase coined by Grant, we're in a marathon of sprints, and it's a long road, and we have to celebrate. We have to work really hard along the way, and we have to celebrate along the way. But just noticing that there's no victory lap here, we know that there's still a lot of work to do. And President Schaefer, that concludes my report for the evening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Superintendent Banner, and thank you also, EDI Program Manager Grant Twyman. Not only do we appreciate the report tonight, but we really have appreciated not only the work, but the passion and really just that deep level of commitment that you bring to it. So thank you very much to both of you on that. And now, public, as I stated earlier, there was a comment that was made specifically by Director Regman that I felt warranted clarification because it felt culturally insensitive to me to use the phrase crack the whip. And I want everyone to know that tonight, we're not really talking about being politically correct. We're not trying to stifle anyone's freedom of speech, nor are we in any way trying to remove somebody from office. We're here to make sure that we are indeed being culturally sensitive and aware on behalf of our community. I want the community to know that we do see you. And we know that 72% of our students are people of color. And we don't want to in any way ignore the responsibility that we have to make sure that the expressions that we give have a positive impact. That's our goal, is to have a positive impact on the life of each and every student. And so around the work of equity, we work very hard to be on this journey together and to move forward with one voice. And therefore, if a voice seems divergent, or if there's a point of clarification needed, then we just want to make sure that we do that. And so with that in mind, I'd like to ask Paul if you would just begin our collective conversation tonight, really in terms of how you felt about the comment and your personal commitment to equity. You are on mute, Paul, just to let you know.
Yeah, I understand that I'm on mute. Not anymore. Why don't we let the other board members go first? It seems like I always have to go first, and then everybody takes their shots at me. So why don't we let the other board members speak about what they believe equity is, and then I'll give my comments.
I was specifically requesting that you be given an opportunity also to share what you meant by the comment "crack the whip" too, because I think as we have comments, that's why we're really here tonight, Paul, because of that comment. And so you made it, the other board directors didn't. So if I'm a board director, I would like to know what you meant by that comment so that I know how to share what I think.
Well, we're in the education business, and one of the things that we do in education is we use a dictionary. So if you don't know what something means, you look it up. And so I'd be interested in what other people have found out when they looked up the word.
And what was your intention, Paul, from your dictionary definition of "crack the whip"? What did it mean to you when you stated in the context that you did?
Let's go back to that meeting. What was the discussion of the meeting that night, last Monday night? We got a briefing on three things. First off, open doors, which if you look at me, I probably the first one that started bringing in. It started with no dropouts, which is a program that I pushed at the very, very beginning. Took several years before we even got it started, but it's now grown into this open doors program, which we all have nothing positive but positive things to say about it, and the staff that's running that, and the families that have participated in that have been very, very excited. And I've spoken at that graduation multiple times, as other board members have too, and it's just a wonderful program, and it makes a difference for all our children. Then we got a briefing on Careertech Ed, and I asked them questions on that one too. The question that I ask is that why aren't we doing more in apprenticeships and those kinds of things? As I shared in that meeting, that we the unions pay for apprenticeships, and then we put off to a workshop in the future to talk about age, because the pushback was, well, you can't do that until you're 18. And I just asked, why not? Why not? Who makes the rules? And so can we do things younger? Again, as I shared with people that night, and I'll share now, I grew up on a farm. Shoot, I was driving tractors before I was 13 years old, and did lots of those kinds of things. And it was a tremendous learning experience. As I work as a handyman now, people ask me, say, Paul, how do you know how to do that? I said, I grew up on a farm. And so I had those opportunities. Then we got into the third subject we were asked to talk about, or was briefed on, which was graduation pathways. And so I had some questions there, because we use our majority of our students use it was in the 70% range. I don't remember the exact number now, 70 something percent, use the Smarter Balance assessment as their pathway to getting a high school diploma. We also learned again that our high school diploma, our high school graduates, we're still not above 90%. We're right there, and we've improved a lot since I've been on the board. I don't take credit for that, but we have improved, but we still have 10% more. And I guess that was the basis of where my comments came. You said, well, we're going to speak with one voice, and you asked and said we'd do another workshop on the graduation pathways. What are we going to do? Because that's what my question. This whole diversity issue, if you look at it, wouldn't be a problem if we had 100% graduation. But the problem is people are dropping out and not getting there. And so my challenge and my thoughts when I was having this conversation back and forth a little bit was that, how do we get there? My goal my whole life, you know, in the Marine Corps is how do we get to be the best? You know, you don't get there by being second place. You get there by being the best. And so I'm imploring people, man, let's crack the whip and let's get on with this program. Let's figure out how to get this done. So we get 100% of our students that graduate. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I would like to see in our community. Again, you know, as I've shared with people, and people can look at our budget, you know, we're over $200 million every year on public education in the Clover Park district. It works out to what, about $15,000 a student. We spend a lot of money on education. Is that good or bad? Well, it's a good thing because our state constitution is very clear that a basic education is a paramount responsibility of the state of Washington. And so that's what I want to see. But, you know, when we have to face our taxpayers, are we getting the best value for our dollar? Those are questions we have to ask. Now, when we go further to diversity, you know, you talk about the Wasda definition. As a matter of fact, I was on the Wasda board when we wrote that. There are several words in there that I put in. When Ron Banner just briefed tonight, he said in October, we had another opportunity to talk about that. That's true. But if you remember, it was less than 10 minutes. And it was basically because I was trying to make an amendment to that. And I was trying to get us to say, what does diversity and equity, what does it really mean? And I got voted down 4-1, if you remember. And so we decided not to make an amendment to the WASDA definition. I think there's some things that could be changed in that could make it better. But for me, when I look at diversity, I use the analogy of being a sprinter in a track meet. And, you know, when you come up to the starting line, some people think diversity is getting everybody to this, and equity is getting everybody to the starting line together. If they're all on the starting line, then that's good enough. And for me, that's not good enough. You know what? If you've ever run in track, if you get to the starting line, there are starting blocks, there are track shoes, and then you have to know how the signal gun goes off. You know, when the starter. So what does he say? He says, on your mark, get set, and then the gun goes off. Unfortunately, many of the children that show up at school today, we're trying to get them to the starting line, but they need a little additional help. And so to me, equity is all about how do we give them that little extra boost? How do we show them how to use the starting block? How do we show them about track shoes? How do we show them how they can learn how to, the starter pistol? Now, I wish I could make everyone a winner. I can't do that. But if I can get everybody to the starting line so that they know how the game's played and so that they have an opportunity to run their best race, then that's an equitable situation from my perspective. And that's all I want. And
I asked you, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Well, I'll be done.
No, I'd asked and I appreciate your comments on equity. You shared a lot, and certainly things for us that would create a good platform for discussion. But specifically, I'd asked you around, you had said everybody can look up the dictionary word of what crack the whip means. And I'd asked you if you would personally help us understand what context or what it meant to you, because that would help with clarification, I believe. But you didn't respond to that. Did you want to share anything on that piece? I'm just not sure.
Well, I mean, it's a term that people use to get things done. So if you got a new boss and a job, he'll come in and the term will be, man, the boss cracked the whip on us today to get this thing done. My guess is that when Ron came in as our new superintendent, there's some things that he tried to initiate and make happen. So in a sense, people could have said, you know, Ron cracked the whip on us today, or he's cracked the whip on us this last month, or he's cracked the whip ever since he's been superintendent. They could say that. And that's what I mean by that.
All right. I think I'll go next. I'd like to respond to something you said, Paul, about if we were at 100% graduation, that diversity wouldn't be an issue. I'm not sure that I could agree with that. Well, I want us to always be at 100%. We would still want to have an amazing focus on equity and diversity. It's not just getting to a certain number, it's having a culture and the ability to truly value and see one another. So I would share that in line with some of the other things that you had stated. But I do appreciate the fact that, yes, we would all want to see each and every child graduate and be successful for sure. But just graduating people doesn't mean that, according to what we said about student success, doesn't mean that we've really set them fully up for success. The other board members, would you please respond as well? There's two things that we're looking for, just like I'd asked Paul. One is your sense, so he didn't think that cracking the whip had anything to do with being culturally insensitive. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are around that. And then I'm also curious as to just an overview like he shared in terms of your commitment to equity. And then Alyssa, as our new vice president, again, at the board meeting, Paul did recognize some of the exciting things that we did at that meeting, getting to hear from different reports and seeing progress that we made. We're also so pleased to be able to have Alyssa Pearson as our new vice president of the board for this upcoming year. So Alyssa, thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Marty. First of all, I'm not here to go against you or criticize you. I too had the same definition as you did, and that's what I had assumed that it meant when you spoke about it. I do think that maybe this is a good reminder that idioms in general mean possibly different things to different people. It could depend on age, race, a bunch of things, right? People could interpret them different. I did a lot of research on it as well to see different terms. I mean, mine, it went back to the farm life. So, and I know that you have that background, Paul. So I knew that is how you meant it. I personally just try to steer away from using the terms in general, because everyone's life experience is different. They're older terms, I would say. You don't hear it as much as you used to. So I just think we have to be mindful of how people interpret different idioms and terms that we use. As far as equity goes, my goal is to get every student to succeed in Clover Park, regardless of background. Everyone has such a different home life, different circumstances. I want everyone to have an equal opportunity in life. Obviously, that is not always the case, but I would hope that education is not a barrier. I want schools to be safe for all our kids, for them to feel comfortable. At the end of the day, we all want to see graduation rates increase. We don't want anyone left to not graduate. So I think everyone's goal on the board is to get our students to graduation. We understand they have different starting points. How do we get them extra help that they need, regardless of background, race, ethnicity, gender? Just how do we get them to succeed?
Thank you. And then Carol, go ahead. I see your finger up. If you would come off mute, Carol.
Paul, thank you very much for your words and some of your statements. I do appreciate them. Ron, I want to say I really do appreciate the work that you have intentionally brought to the district so that we can create a deeper and more sustainable sense of equity for all kids, because we know, my personal belief is education is the equalizer of opportunity. And if we provide different educations for different tiers of kids, we're taking away opportunities for those kids. And so it's very important that education is given out. And some kids we know need different things. They come with different backgrounds, and it's the end result for every child achieving the best that they can be and becoming the most they can be is the end. One of the things when we did hire our superintendent was, and Marty, it's behind you on your flag behind you, seek to understand and be sensitive to. When I first heard that, I thought, oh, that's nice. You know, I've heard lots and lots of slogans and statements, and that statement has probably spoken the most to me. Seek to understand and be sensitive to. I have often said, I believe Clover Park is the United Nations of education because we have all walks of life, all backgrounds. We have such a varied thing, and I believe that's the beauty of us. If we don't take children in the classroom who might be having a difficult day, or even board members or teachers or even citizens, and make what we say and what we do and look at that as a teachable moment, we've lost an opportunity to move forward. And so I think it's important that we're having this conversation so that we all can move forward. Clover Park has done a lot of incredible things, and I'm being this senior board member, quite frankly, when I got on the board, graduation rates were in the 60s. I thought, how can that be? I don't know that many kids dropping out. Well, lots of conversations, lots of delving into the issues. And then we made some pretty incremental jumps. And I remember being told this: incremental jumps are much easier to make than when you get to a higher level, they become smaller and harder because you have to keep drilling down and you have to keep working harder to make that difference. At 89.9%, I did do some looking. There's not a school district in the state that has 100%, even though I know schools do, but not as districts don't. I think it's important. You know, Paul, I mean, your genre as far as age, you're a little older than me. Things that I am grateful, things that we said and heard when we were kids are no longer being said and are hopefully not being heard by kids. We have to grow and we have to hear the voices of our students and deal toward what are their needs, what are they hearing, what are they seeing, instead of them trying to, it really is about them. It's not about just, if I say something and they don't understand it, I need to clarify it. If I say something and it's misunderstood or it's inappropriate, I need to respond to that. Our students are our customers. Our students are our bottom line. They are our products. And we need to work every day to deliver an educational that gives them the most opportunity that they can have. It doesn't make any difference where they come from, who their parents are, where they live, what they bring to school. We're Clover Park School District, and we take a child where they are and we try to move them forward to where they need to be. So first of all, I want to say thank you to every teacher who's taken on that mantra. We're not an easy district. We know that, but we're working hard. And I know the teachers and principals, when we talk about the value of what it costs to educate a child, you know what, if we spend 15,000 on one and we spend 12 on another, and we spend even less on another because they come to school ready to learn, prepared with all the supports they need, I'm glad that we have the opportunity to do that. That's what we need to give to our students. I also want to say Grant Twyman, when we hired Grant, it's amazing how districts, I think we were one of the first ones to do so because we were ahead of our local districts in Pierce County. And I appreciate having someone whose only focus is on that equity piece. So if we do take a step off, Grant will bring us back in, be it in a classroom, be be it in a boardroom, be it in a principal's office, or being at an administration building. That's what we have, and I do appreciate that opportunity to have Grant working with all of our districts. So I look forward to teachable moments. I look forward to a greater understanding of our students. And I think that we're going to move forward, we're going to progress, and our kids are going to continue to do better.
Thank you, Carol. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Carol, a lot of the things you said, I totally support, but there's one thing you said that causes me some concern. The kids don't drive the boat. When you come to school, you're coming to learn. And so when it comes to history and some of those things, they need to be taught that. Now, does there need to be some flexibility? Certainly there do. There needs to be some ideas. But, you know, there was one thing, I see a lot of young people out there, they don't understand why that we have the Electoral College. And it's to protect the minority. And, you know, and so somehow those things need to be taught to young people. So we have to be careful when we allow students to start driving the boat when it comes to an education perspective. So I think those are some things that have to be part of the discussion when we go there. And that really doesn't have anything to do with equity. In other words, we learn from our past. Many of the things that I've learned in my lifetime is we've learned from others. And certainly in aviation safety, you know, most of the books that we've read in aviation safety are written in people's blood because they died. And so we've learned some hard lessons. And so school is a way to bring our children along and our students along so that they've learned what's happened in the past so that they can move forward. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have some maneuver room, because you know what? Just because we did it that way in the past doesn't mean it's necessarily the best. But it needs to be put together. So I would challenge you on that a little bit, Carol.
Well, and I hear you.
Carol, just one more. I just want us to stay to the point. So again, we're not necessarily moving towards different teaching styles or how much somebody needs to learn, how much they bring to the table in learning. I can appreciate those conversations. I just want to make sure that we do honor the time and give each person an opportunity to talk specifically to the comments that we brought up earlier. And Carol, you did a great job. You shared what you believed about equity. And so let's just stay on crack the whip comment, and then also make sure that we land on what we truly do believe about equity. And then there's time afterwards we could circle back and hit some other topics. But Carol, was there anything else you wanted to say?
Well, and this is, you know what, I'm not gonna say what I, because I think it's important that we stay on the equity, we stay on the crack the whip, we stay on the thing. Well, I guess I am gonna say it actually. This is but as we think about our past and learning from history, Paul, you and I, in our age type of thing, we also need to stay in the present and listen to what the present is happening. And if we don't do that, there's got to be a blending of both. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Anthony, would you weigh in on these subject matters?
Yes. Well, to just start off with, I like to, thank the community and everybody that did come together. I think all of the letters had a lot of good things to say, although, it's different opinions that necessarily don't go together. I think they're all valid and respected. And, when I first heard the conversation, I right away knew that Paul was not meaning anything in a horrible or negative way. Right. I know his intentions are to direct us and direct the community as a leader, in the most positive way. And he's not trying to offend anybody, but I do know, in this day and time, we want to make sure that we're not offending anyone as we are leaders and influences of the community. I think it's very important that we are conscious and respectful of each other and every individual. And from my own experience, if I accidentally, offended somebody, I would not hesitate to show my empathy and to apologize on this situation. And that would also give me the opportunity to make changes to any offensive message that I may have. So I would definitely take that time to analyze and to explain or re-explain what I'm trying to express fully, and then follow up with questions too, to make sure that the one that I have offended is on the same page, and from a communication standpoint, we're together on this. We definitely all want to keep in mind that words and phrases can be offensive. For example, my mother, she had always told me the phrase, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words may never hurt you, or hurt me. And I think that's a prime example that, unfortunately, it's not true. In fact, we have learned that, from phrases and words, they can be extremely dangerous and they can cause a lot of pain. So, yeah, we all have freedom of speech, but as a community, we want to make sure that we are being respectful and that we show empathy to everybody. So those are my thoughts on the subject and what we're trying to explain from a school board.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Thank you. One of the ways that I felt about the phrase "crack the whip," as soon as it was said, it did not feel good to me for three reasons. One, just the analogy seems like what we're saying to the educators and even to our students and to our staff, that we need to push you harder, and the way we're going to push you harder is the same way that we would seek to drive an animal to get an outcome. And so, number one, I just want to acknowledge, as I think has been said tonight, that we're proud of our educators, the work that they do. We're proud of our students, the efforts that they make. There's never been a more difficult time ever to try to increase your scholastic capacity. And I just didn't, so even from that standpoint, I don't think I would say, yeah, now just keep driving it harder. That didn't seem good to me. It seemed insensitive to the effort of the teachers and the students and the families who are struggling to be at home and being moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents and teachers. This is tough stuff. And then number two, Paul, I have spent summers on the farm. And so I am aware of different analogies. You called me and you told me I should watch the movie Seabiscuit and better understand what it means in context of striking an animal. That's not the background that I would even tie to the way that you move and motivate animals. And so just even comparing the potential scaring, intimidating, and/or hitting of animals to get an outcome on the farms that I work at, my Uncle Cecil's dairy farm, it wasn't like that. It wasn't a drive them. It's more of a work with them. So I just, and even if it was, comparing people to animals did not feel good to me. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And so to me, that makes it even potentially difficult if I was a person in a people group that had been enslaved, who had others not only just hit animals, but possibly crack the whip in reference to people. I would want to make sure I didn't say things like that myself. So it really did feel insensitive to me. I agree with the other board directors. I don't need to evaluate your motives. It's kind of like Alyssa said, we don't know what you meant by it, or we don't assume that you meant anything bad by it at all. In fact, we would assume that you didn't mean anything bad by it. But others don't know what your motives are and your intentions. They take the words that you say, and that may not be motivating them. And then my concern as the president of the board is that it could reflect upon a voice of the board, that because you said it. That's how it could be perceived that we believe about it. Therefore, it seemed like it warranted conversation. The thing that still disturbs me the most is that when I shared that, I felt that I wasn't comfortable. I didn't say, hey, there's people groups out there that may not be comfortable. I said, I'm not comfortable with that comment. You doubled down and you said, no, I said what I meant, something to that effect. So I didn't feel like you were being.
No, Marty, what you asked me was, do I know what it means? And I said, yes, I know what it means. And I said, I meant what I said, which is what I've said all evening this evening, that this term, and if you look it up in the dictionary, it's talking about a manager getting the stuff to get the things done. We as a board need to make sure that we get this thing done. And if we want to get into etiquette at this point in thing, you as board president, when you call somebody out on the board, if you wanted to have this conversation, we could have had this conversation after the meeting and tried to make something different out of it. But no.
Well, in terms of etiquette, Paul, you interrupted me. I didn't get to finish my statement.
You've interrupted me on more than one occasion at multiple board meetings, and you can ask any other board member, they know that. So thank you.
And so my comment is that I shared that and I'm more than happy to go back and look at it, that the comment made me uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with the statement. And so I didn't wait to another board meeting. I did call you the very next day, first thing in the morning, for the record, just to weigh in on it and give us a time of reflection. The reason I did it in the particular meeting is because, again, we have one voice. So when people make statements, and if we are silent as to those statements, then it might seem that we're complicit or we're in agreement. And so you can't just always, I wish I could ignore some of the things. For example, tonight when you made a great comment that and I may not be able to say it exactly the way that you said it, but what I received from it is that aviators had to take correction, and that sometimes those corrections were made by blood, and so it's life and death. You have to be teachable and correctable. And, my thoughts on that is in terms of civil rights, people in championing equity have also written this thing out with their blood, and we want to get it right too. That's how strongly I feel about it. I don't want to ignore things. I want to lean into them and make sure we get it right. And so if that means pausing or asking for clarification, if you want to go back and listen, I'm so happy to do that, because I don't feel like I did interrupt you at all. I waited till the appropriate time in the board agenda where it says board discussion and information, and then I brought it up then, and I tried to do it in a polite and dignified manner to seek clarification. So if I came across rude or worse, then I'm very teachable and correctable, because I don't want to come across that way. I do want us to be able to move towards one voice and make sure that we have the best interest of all, and that we truly do seek to understand and be sensitive to one another. So that would be my comment. I feel like some of the other questions that you have about being able to move and increase numbers in graduations, those are admirable, and we all want that. How we get there is why we personally went along the path of trying to grow as a community and through equity. And so that's just been an important piece of it. And now in our meeting coming up on January 11th, we're going to need to be able to make sure that we are of one voice on how we feel about equity, which is part of the reason we're having this meeting tonight as well. And so if there's anything that the rest of you as board directors need from other board members and or the superintendent to be able to make a stand on what we want to do to continue with our declaration of equity, we do want to take the time to be able to do that.
Carol. I hope this fits in to what we want to say. Paul, I think it's important to address when you said that on the Wasda diversity statement, and that you wanted to add some additions to it, and we voted no. I think it's really important that I'm going to speak for myself. I thought that our state governing board, and we know that a lot of time, effort, and energy went into it, that it was very well written. And I personally didn't think it needed any more addendums or any more wordsmithing, which is sometimes, I know in education, that's kind of what we do a little bit. So I just want to go on the record for saying the Wasda diversity statement, I believe, was very well written, which is the only reason I decided to uphold the Wasda statement as opposed to altering it again and then taking that back. The other thing that I know the board knows this, but I think it's important for our reminder for our listening guests. When one of us has an idea, like let's say we want to increase student achievement or we want to increase graduation rates, we do have a venue and a form and a way to do that. Every year we do an evaluation on the superintendent and we create goals with our superintendent, and we can tell him, Mr. Superintendent, we want you to increase student achievement. We want you to increase graduation rates. And what's hard for all of us is we don't get the opportunity to tell them how. We can tell them what, we don't get to tell them how. And I'm going to say that's really hard because we all have good ideas and we all want the best for our kids and we all believe that we might have the golden nugget. So we do meet with our superintendent twice a year to discuss what students are doing and the rates that they're at and where we're going and where she thinks our student achievement, graduation rates, attendance, all of the things that we evaluate him on, which is about a 9-page evaluation, a 9 or 10-page evaluation. So it is very complete and comprehensive. So I think that just as a wrap up, let's remember, we're the policymakers. We're not and it's really hard not to be I got an idea, let me go do my idea. But we get to tell you what, we get to let the superintendent tell us how. And we have done things when we talk about the improvements that we've made, it's important to know it wasn't that long ago. Test scores were stagnant. They were low. It's like if Clover Park's in the Post County School District and somebody else is going to do better than us, we started feeding our kids breakfast. We feed most of our kids breakfast. You can't do well on an empty stomach. We made small class size a priority. We looked at relationships, advisory classes. The implementations that Clover Park School District has put on for students to be able to be the best they can be, no matter where they come from, has been a real big piece of the puzzle of our success. So I just think we need to always, I'm the positive person. I'm always going to say positive and for what we do and what we have done.
Thank you, Carol. And then I just want to make sure that, Ron, that we give you an opportunity. We have 6 minutes left. Usually what we do with the last 5 to 10 minutes is make sure if there's any specific action items that we wanted to follow through on. But Ron, at this point, in just wanting to ask you if is there anything that you want to hear solidified from us as the board? Is there anything you need from us?
Well, I can speak for me, so I can't speak for all people of color. And the one thing that I would want to impress upon is, as a principal, when I was working with kids who were complaining of harassment, intimidation, or bullying, and when I address, and I'm not equating this, Paul, I want to be real clear, I'm not equating this to you doing that. I'm just trying to put some context around this situation. And so when I would address the alleged harasser, intimidator, bully, typically what was said was, that's not what I meant, that's not what I intended. And what's important for us to note is that even in the letter of the law around harassment, intimidation, and bullying, the intention of the person doing it is not what qualifies as the measure of whether it is or is not. It's the perception of the person. And even in most situations, a person doesn't mean it. And we still have to attend to the impact of how something was perceived. And so I just think it's important as food for thought, not as for response this evening, but as food for thought for all of us. And I heard this coming out with several of the board directors as well. When there is a negative impact, we have to stop and say, did I contribute to that, whether by intention or by not intention? And if I did contribute to that, there's a measure of ownership to just say, there was a negative impact there and it was caused by what I said. And even though my intention wasn't that, I need you to know that I apologize, or I can think about my words differently in the future. And I think that that's something that we need to think about. Because we've got a long journey ahead of us. We've got a marathon of sprints ahead of us. And whether people believe that this is the work or not, as long as you charge me with being the superintendent, it will be part of the work. And because we do have a long road, we have to recognize that, and we will make mistakes. I promise you, I will make mistakes. We will all make mistakes. And I come back to us being teachable and correctable and being willing to empathize truly. We will have a lot of capital with our stakeholders if we can do that. I guess I would end it there.
And then board, is there any further follow through? Because I don't have a request from the board to do any specific research or get information back, but I want to give you an opportunity if there's something specifically you'd want that we would be able to follow through with.
You said that we're going to do something with January 17th, is it?
Well, we have January 11th, Paul, is I believe is our next scheduled regular board meeting, and we will do an affirmation of our declaration around equity. And then, as you know, we also have other meetings coming up. Where we have a board retreat. We have a joint city council meeting. We have other meetings coming up as well.
So on the 17th, the declaration we're going to make, is that the one that Ron read this evening?
I believe it's the 11th, and I'm just trying to be accurate.
Or 11th, I'm sorry, 11th. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Is that the document that Ron read tonight? Is that we're just
Yes,
going
the
to reaffirm
declaration that he read that came from our June retreat and then was agreed upon with through the board briefs in August, I believe he shared. And so if I just want the community to remember too, that our goal wasn't just to come up with a policy. We have a policy. You can go in there and read, there's been a policy. That's why I shared it. It went all the way back to at least Dr. Doris McEwen. And so that policy has been there. It's called Equity and Excellence. It was amended in, I believe, 2012. We can go back and look to be accurate, but somewhere around there with Superintendent LeBeau. And so the point is that it's a living document. It's a living organic conversation. It's not about just having a policy. It's about having a culture that truly does see. And so again, for my own visual, for my help, I keep the We See Lakewood up. I need to know that 72% of our students are students of color. That means I have to work harder to understand some people that may not be in my natural comfort zone in the way that I have my first pair of lens on. And so we are at work at it, but we want to have an amazing culture that truly does know how to value each and every person. And so that does take a lot of work, and it's a journey, and it is more of a culture than it is a policy, that we want the policies in place as well. And so we haven't been in a quote unquote hurry just to get the policy. We've been doing everything we can to develop a true team and a right culture around equity. And I hope I stated that well. And so even on January the 11th, it's just a reminder that, yeah, we've made a declaration and we are moving. And we know that, as Carol said, that, and Ron certainly made clear, that our district's going to continue to work on having a very strategic plan around the way to increase the effectiveness of student success and equity and building community. And so that will be unfolding, and it won't be a one-time thing. It'll be an ongoing thing, if I understood it correctly. It is exactly 6:30. Are there any other comments before I look for a motion to adjourn.
So what would the term you'd be using then tonight? You're imploring us? Or what are you doing?
I stated at the very beginning that my goal was very clear, that I wanted to clarify what was meant by the comment that created confusion to some.
But I
And
mean,
that-
but what do you want us to do now with
if there was
diversity
any,
and equity? I mean,
yeah,
so
if any board director wanted further clarifications or to have us address certain topics prior to January 11th, I want to make sure that you had that opportunity. Because the goal now is to make sure that we come back with one voice so that our superintendent, staff, students, community realize that, yes, we are continuing to work very hard to build a healthy community that includes a commitment to equity. And as Paul said, Paul and I have had many conversations after board meetings. And the goal is to have those conversations. And so if anybody, let's make sure that we have conversations and that we genuinely seek to listen to one another. Thank you, board, for listening well. Thank you, each person, for sharing your heart. And to the community, thank you for the many emails and the correspondence you've made. We know this is an important topic to you, and we take it seriously as well. I'm now looking for a motion to adjourn. Made by Carol, looking for a second. Made by Anthony. All those in favor of adjourning at 6:33, please raise your right hand. And the motion is unanimous. Again, appreciate each of you and look forward to seeing you hopefully soon as we try to move and get our lives back to normal and into schools. Thank you.